Okay, this one will be covering a little bit of loft. This is particularly good for doing freeways, but it is a bit of a strange command, and I'll be using some profiles that I've drawn in Civil 3D first, just to demonstrate some of the strangenesses. Alright, so what I've got here are some very, very basic profiles. What is useful about these profiles is that if I do the distance command on them, you can see that they are, exactly 3 meters. Just as a sort of a, I drew these quickly, but it's exactly 3 meters for the first lane, with another grip edit at the second lane, grip edit third lane, grip edit fourth lane. Each of these dimensions are going to be exact, and you'll see that I've got a grip edit, right in the middle of my geometry. Now the thing with loft is that it likes to have objects to sort of put along itself that are, have the same number of vertices and have the same start position. So what I've got is I've got this one, which is all perfect, and then I've got a modified version where I've removed some vertices to make a thinner profile section or path shape to run on my loft. And then I've got one that I've modified. It's a modification of this top one, but I haven't removed any vertices, and it's you'll see what happens when I do that. Alright, so I'm in Max, and just to show you, I guess, quickly what those things look like, we can just have a look here. I've brought in the sections. You can see that I'm getting very different lofts in all 3 sections. So first of all, I'll just demonstrate what loft is. So essentially it is in plan view. If we have a shape, so a path, this is known as a path, we can come in here to our compound objects, which is under the compound objects here, and we've got loft. And because I had my path selected already, now all I need to do is get my shape. So let's say I'm going to select here, I've drawn a rectangle in Max. What that's done, if I just go a bit sideways, is it's lofted that rectangle along that shape. Now, one of the nice things about loft is that we can also change that profile as we move along. You can change it by percentage or distance. So let's say I want to change the profile at 50%. I can get shape again, and it will change that profile out to the next shape. So it's good, except that it's a little bit difficult to see. The path that is the shape that it's sort of running along. You can see here, maybe I can go into the front view, no, left view, might show it more readily. The path runs through the center point of these objects, because these objects drawn in Max have their pivot point right in the center. So these are going to be lofting along this shape from pivot point to pivot point, so it works out beautifully. Now I'll just show you what happens if I take this shape and come along here to my hierarchy, and if I say effect pivot only, and if I move this pivot, you'll see that if I were to re-loft this, we would get a moved hierarchy. So let's just go inside it, and if we go back to our 50%, so we're at our 50% and we get our shape, and we take that one, you can see that it'll move off to the side. So it's just recognizing where that pivot point is in both of these objects. All right, so as we know, when we bring in shapes from AutoCAD, let's say I'm going back to this file here, I've got these 3 shapes. If I'm bringing them into Max, I'll just do my file, import, and freeway basic sections, open. It'll do this because it's coming in from Civil. Don't worry about it too much. And I have drawn in meters, so I don't need to rescale. Now, you'll see I've got my 3 objects there, and what I would need to do in order to use these as a loft is I would have to come in here to my spline, and then I would have to take my spline and detach bits. Right? So selecting this one, detach. Detecting this one, detach. And I could leave this one as it is, it wouldn't really matter. All right, but what you'll see when we do that is that the pivot point for this one is in the middle of these 3 objects. The pivot point for them will be the same for all of them. So let's just see what that does if I take this down here and loft with those. So I've got a, okay, I'll just do another copy of this. So just holding this and bringing it down. Copy, don't worry about that, doesn't matter. And let's make that into a loft. So loft, get shape, and I select this guy. And I'll just show you what happens with the second one, get shape, this one. So it all looks okay, doesn't it, in top view? It's not, but it looks okay. Let's just having a look at what's happened there. So why that's kind of rising up into the air like that is because the pivot for this one is below it, and having the same pivot for this one is above it. So what we would need to do to have it all sit on the one level would be to move the pivot point for all of them to be at the same height. So I could come in here, I need to come into the hierarchy, I need to affect pivot only, and potentially I would probably just turn on my 3D snaps. So for this one I would then just try and get to the midpoint of that line, affect pivot, right click, get out of there. And for this one I would then do the same thing, affect pivot only, moving it to the midpoint of that line. So you can see why it's important to have snaps available in very logical areas. And I'll do the same for this one as well, because this one not only talks about where the pivot is, but it will also talk about having the same number of vertices coming in from Civil 3D. Okay, so taking this object here, now we want to come back to our modify panel and, taking our loft, we want to then say OK at 50% or wherever we want to get it. We want to get the new shape. I can't remember which shape we used at the start. So did we use this one? Maybe, can't remember. Maybe at 0 we will go back and select this one. All right, so at least now what we're getting is a flat profile because the pivot points are all in the same Z plane, I guess. But there are still some things that are a bit funny about the way this works. Although this one's better than the one I did before. So if let's see if we can see with our edged faces on. Yes, we can. All right, so this is the one we just did. And what I used was the profile. Here we go, here's where it's going funny. I used the profile where I had removed some vertices. So if I use two profiles, one of them with less vertices than the other, Loft may not know which vertice to match up with which other one. So you'll get some funky kind of twisting and errors. What I will do now is we will, instead of using this as our 50% profile, we'll use this one because it has the same number of vertices as the top one. So coming back into this loft and looking at the path, let's just bring it all into the view. Looking at the path at the 50% point, 50%, and we want to get this different shape. You can see my geometry is already a whole lot better. So we're getting nice quads, and if I turn this on, my default shading, you can see that the edges of my freeway are looking like they're in the right spot. Okay, so those are the basics of Loft. Yes, so this was the one where the pivots were in a different kind of Y position. This is the one where you've got not a matching number of vertices, and then this one has the matching number of vertices and the matching Y position or X position, whatever it is, for the pivot point. So that's really all there is to that. There are a whole lot of other, fun things within Loft, but I think it's probably just best to have a play. Thank you.